This is Devin with the KJH podcast, and UFC on ESPN Plus 12, otherwise known as UFC Greenville, is in the books. And the big story on the night was the main event results between the Korean Zombie Chan Sung Jung getting a TKO victory over number 5 ranked featherweight Renato Moicano in just 58 seconds. And as you see here with some highlights of the fight, they come out. This is a quick fight, as I mentioned, only took 58 seconds. And the Korean Zombie, reminiscent of a fight he had with Mark Hominick years ago, comes out, drops Renato Moicano fast, and keeps the pressure on him as soon as he gets him hurt, and ends up getting him on the ground and finishing him off and stealing the show for the evening. When we look at these rankings, you had Moicano, as I mentioned, coming in as the number 5 ranked contender, coming off a loss against Jose Aldo, and Chan Sung Jung coming off a loss over Yair Rodriguez, came in at number 12. So we're going to see the Korean Zombie take a big jump in the rankings, deservingly so. And this was definitely an impressive fight. I think he was winning the fight that he just lost recently to Yair Rodriguez before he was knocked out with 1 second left in the 5th round in an incredible knockout. But it's really a very impressive story when we look at Chan Sung Jung. He disappeared for a good 4 or 5 years due to, I think, a combination of injuries, but also obligated military service in South Korea. But before that, back in 2013, he was a title challenger. He fought Jose Aldo at UFC 163 in the main event for the UFC featherweight title, and it was a fight that he lost, threw his arm out. It was really being outclassed in that fight, to be fair. But nevertheless, this is a guy that has a win over Dustin Poirier and Mark Hominick. He pulled off the only twister in UFC history over Leonard Garcia, and he came back 4 years later after the loss against Aldo and knocks out Dennis Bermudez in the first round. Has an absolute classic with Yair Rodriguez in a fight that I mentioned that I thought he was winning before he receives one of probably the most crazy knockouts in UFC history with 1 second left. Yair slips a punch and lands an uppercut elbow. That was just incredible. It knocks him out at literally 4:59 of round 5 in the main event of UFC Fight Night 139. And now he comes back in against a highly touted prospect in this division. Not even really prospect, a highly touted contender in Renato Moicano, who before his fight with Jose Aldo, the fight before this, was probably one fight away from fighting Max Holloway. If he would have beat Aldo, he would have probably been getting a title fight. And he comes in here and blasts him out within a minute. So, big win for the Korean Zombie. We will talk more about this going forward. But going on down the line, in the co-main event of the evening, due to John Lineker having to be pulled out and his fight with Rob Font being scratched, the co-main event of the evening was Randy Brown taking on Brian Barberena, and Randy Brown gets the TKO win with knees and punches at 2:54 of round 3. And Randy Brown, I thought this was a breakout performance for me when it comes to him. I think I mentioned in my preview that this was a guy that was beating Nico Price. If you go back and watch that fight, he was fighting really well. He beat Mickey Gall. He took a tough loss to Bilal Muhammad. He beat Brian Camozzi and Eric Montano. And he's been in the UFC a while, kind of had some ups and downs, but I think he's really getting his form. He's just getting better. And he was losing the wrong end of some hammer fists from Nico from the back, and Nico landed it from his back, a bunch of hammer fists that actually knocked Randy Brown out. But Randy Brown comes back against a tough, thick-headed guy like Barberena, and really put on a show in this fight. The third round, the sequence that finished this fight was incredibly impressive. I encourage everybody to go watch this. When it comes to Barberena, 14-7 now, 30 years old. He's on a 2-fight win streak. He's 2-4 in his last 6 fights. But those losses are against guys like Colby Covington, Leon Edwards, Vicente Luque, and now Randy Brown. Guys I all think are some of the best welterweights in the world. And he's reliable. He's game every time he fights. So I think Brian Barberena still has a spot with the company, but he is on a skid. And he is going to be back to the drawing board for him. But moving on down this card, we had a good fight between Andre Ewell and Anderson Dos Santos down in the bantamweight division. This was a very, very close fight. Could have gone either way. I think I would have probably had the second and third round for Dos Santos, if I'm being honest. Very close fight, but nevertheless, Ewell pulls off the win. Ewell, third fight in the UFC with wins over Renato Barao, and now Anderson Dos Santos. He lost his last fight to Nathaniel Wood. I think he's a tough fighter. I think this was a really good fight. Dos Santos has really good grappling. Very, very close fight. I had the first round for Ewell pretty convincingly, was landing some really good pull counters with the left hand. Dos Santos was applying a lot of pressure. I thought he was a better grappler. As I said, just very, very close fight. It was could have gone either way, but I want to shift the attention now to fight between the women's flyweight division between Andrea Lee and Montana De La Rosa, because I'm very high after this fight on Andrea Lee. I think that Andrea Lee gets the decision win in this fight. I think that this flyweight division, as I've mentioned several times now, is a division that's still in development. It's a new division. Valentina Shevchenko's got a pretty strong hold on it, but they have these rankings in there right now. But I knew that these were going to fluctuate. We're gonna find out more about what this division, who's really the elite in this division, going forward. I think in like the next year or so. I think Andrea Lee's somebody that might climb up that top 10. I think she's really solid fighter. She's now 3-0 inside the octagon with wins over Veronica Macedo, Ashley Evans Smith, and now Montana De La Rosa. 30 years old. She was really good grappling and really good striking in this fight. Good boxing, landed some good elbows, applied really good pressure. She seemed really physical and strong in there. I think she's a good size and good weight for this division. So Andrea Lee, I think, is somebody to keep our eyes on. I believe she came in ranked at number 10 in the division. I think she'll definitely obviously keep that. I think she is a top 10 flyweight right now, and I think that she's probably going to get a contender that's in that midsection of the top 10 in her next fight. And moving on to the final fight of the main card, Kevin Holland defeated Alessio Di Chirico, and this was another unanimous decision. Kevin Holland is definitely somebody to keep our eyes on. 16-4 overall, 26 years old, and he made his UFC debut after the Dana White Contender Series win over Wilson Santiago against Thiago Santos. And Thiago Santos, as we know, is getting ready to fight Jon Jones in a couple weeks for the UFC light heavyweight title. Well, flash forward, we got Holland right now who's fighting at middleweight down at 185, and now he's on a 4-5 win streak. 3-5 win streak against John Phillips, Gerald Meerschaert, and Alessio Di Chirico. I thought he looked good tonight. Very young. I think he's going to develop even better going forward in the future. Thought this was a good win for him. He's definitely on the right track, moving in the right direction. I think that he might even get a top 15 opponent in his next bout. So, good win for Kevin Holland. Good win for Andrea Lee. Good win for, obviously, the Korean Zombie and Andre Ewell, even though that was a close fight. And very good performance by Randy Brown. So, I already made a prelim video. Go check it out. Me, Chad, and Miguel, I'm sure we'll get on here and talk about the storylines of this a little bit more in depth. If you have not subscribed to the CRP, please go and do so. This has been a CRP UFC Greenville recap.